Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Frankie Corrado, now up on TSN 2. Get to our best bets. Brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour on the Monday Nighter. Seattle laying 2.5 at New York. Danny Dimes under the lights. Giants need a win tonight.
You're a big Danny Dimes fan. Tonight, even more.
Yeah, I guess I have to be now, right? Luke Wilson was in here last hour, and he's on the Seahawks, not shockingly, laying the points. Seattle, he said they could be a 10-point favorite on the road. He'd still take them.
You've liked Danny Dimes in the past.
Danny Dimes has won me some money before. I hammered the Giants getting plus points against the Vikings in the wildcard game last year. I like that. I don't love Danny Dimes without their starting left tackle and without Saquon Barkley, which I think is going to be a reality tonight. But we'll see. Last year he played pretty well. This year clearly has not been the case. So more on that later this hour. Jays are flying into Minnesota. They have officially announced Kevin Gausman as the Game 1 starter. No surprise there. No news, though, on who's going to start Game 2, which I don't really see why you have to wait to figure that out. Like, they're not entitled to give anything, but Minnesota, we know it's Lopez Game 1, it's Sonny Gray Game 2.
Is that just because it's a no-brainer and everyone in the world would know?
It seems that way. Like with the Twins, there's a 2-pack, and then you start talking. I don't know who they're going to throw out for Game 3.
Yeah.
With the Jays, it could be Bassett, it could be Barrios, it could be Kikuchi.
It's probably more of a coin flip between Barrios and Bassett.
More than likely.
Point.
And I'd like to see Barrios like back in Minnesota where he started. He had some great seasons there. Doesn't have a great history pitching against the Twins necessarily.
There's just that recency bias about, well, Barrios has been pitching well, but Bassett, like he's coming
been
off a gem.
Yeah, he's been outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would personally go Gausman 1, Bassett 2, Barrios 3. And I think Kikuchi is there as like a swingman if need be in any of these games.
Yep.
But listen, it's probably going to be a similar story to what it's been all year. At some point, they're going to need clutch hits.
Yeah.
Who's going to supply them? You know, if the pitching is good, which I think it likely will be, if the defense continues to round out the way it has all season, I expect it will be.
Some stolen bases, maybe some bunts. Like, you know the way.
How do you create offense?
And that's, you know, the way playoff baseball gets, right? Like, every at-bat is so important. How far can you kind of take the pitcher into the game? Can you battle 0-2 counts or, you know, keep fouling things off? So, it'll be, of course, it's going to be interesting. But like we keep saying, someone's got to get hot, or the whole lineup, like he needs to have some kind of semblance of heating up at the right time.
Yeah. Now this is it, right? It happened quickly last year. Like a best 2 out of 3 goes by like that. They play Tuesday, Wednesday. They could be done by time we get off the air on Wednesday. Their season could be over.
Can you even wrap your head around what happened last year, how that finished? Like, I still sometimes, it was 8-1?
8-1. They were leading
8-1.
And they lost 10-9 because, remember, it became a tie game, and then I believe they tied it up again 9-9. It was
the most bizarre
like a blur,
finish.
Though. It was absurd.
You almost couldn't believe it.
Yeah, you
couldn't
really
believe that was happening in real time.
Against Seattle, a team that hadn't won in forever themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and now again, you're going up against Minnesota. They have lost 18 playoff games in a row, which is a staggering statistic.
Yeah.
And something you would think in that clubhouse, like, is like shameful almost. Like, you know, if you're like Carlos Correa, you've won a World Series, and now you've taken the money, you stuck around. Everyone thought you were leaving Minnesota last year. Like, you got to be responsible for putting that to an end. Like, you obviously every team is inspired. If you're playing in the playoffs, you're inspired. But if you're in Minnesota, there's like an extra ounce of inspiration because people have been goofing on you. You've lost 18 playoff games in a row.
And you don't want to be associated with that.
That's impossible.
You want to turn it into 20? Be the group that's responsible for turning it into 20?
You hit
thanks.
20, you're the guys that hit 20.
Yeah.
Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, Carlos Correa. No.
Think about the ridicule the Leafs get here, you know, for losing in the first round every year. That's like, at least they win games in those series. They're not getting swept.
They push it to 7, it seems like, every single year.
They just, you know, they have a bad record in Game 7s.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah, 18 in a row is a wild statistic.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see what comes out of the Jays between now and first pitch tomorrow in terms of their plans for Game 2. But it's similar to the way they operated last year. Remember, they didn't announce who was going to start Game 3? And I don't believe they ever officially announced anything because they didn't have to. There wasn't a game 3. But I think it was it Springer who said it was going to be chicken strips going game 3? Someone came out and said they were prepared. They knew that it was going to be stripling.
Like they were confident.
Yeah, we were confident in him. It was going to be all good in game 3. So obviously internally they knew the plan. But I don't know who you're fooling. Like, you think the Twins are sitting there thinking, oh, we didn't prepare for Barrios game 2.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to be Bassett. This totally screws us up.
It's all part of the pre-scout package. They're going through all the guys anyway.
They know who's coming. They know who you have. You're not surprising anyone. Alec Manoah's not showing up out of nowhere to pitch. Just announce who's going game 2 and game 3.
Exactly.
Hook us up here.
Yeah.
All right, here's Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's happening, CJ?
I'll tell you, I was pretty confident I was going to use my tickets for Game 3 last year when they were up 9-1 or whatever in Game 2, but that's another matter.
Isn't that wild that there were a lot of people who had tickets, like had to pick? It's like I can go to one game, I'll keep it for Game 3 because I'm assuming it's going to get that deep. And when they're up 8-1, you're making plans. Like you said, where are we going for lunch? Where are we going for dinner if we have to? What are we doing? And just a complete joke job. No other way to describe it. Complete meltdown.
But I haven't learned my lesson because I've already bought tickets to the ALDS, so I need them to get there.
Yeah, of course. Game 3 and Game 4. It's a lock. Game 3 and 4 will be in Toronto. Everyone knows that. I mean, come on. And if they get through, they're playing Houston.
Yeah.
Right? Houston is now Houston was this close to missing the playoffs, and now they avoid the wild card. And they have home field in the ALDS.
Yeah, that's a quick little turnaround.
Yeah, well, they won 4 in a row, including sweeping Arizona in the final weekend. That's pretty incredible.
Just the model of consistency.
Always
there.
They always find a way, don't they? So the Leafs are back in action tonight. We haven't really talked about this Calle Jarnkrok situation. Do you know what's going on with him, CJ? Like, he's not playing. He's barely skating with the team. There's all these conspiracy theories about his contract and the cap implications. Like, what is up with Jarnkrok?
I can definitely dispel the conspiracy theories. Okay. I think that this is a case of maybe abundance of caution, given how long the preseason is, how much time they still have to ramp up for the season to start. My understanding is he was in a practice or a scrimmage last week, and I think one of the AHL guys might have caught him, and he's basically been dealing with a sore neck. So I don't have any reason to think it's going to linger on too much longer. I think they just wanted to take the time because they have it, and there's still 2 more preseason games Thursday and Saturday, so I would be surprised if we didn't see him playing in at least one of those and then be ready for opening night next week.
CJ, how much do you read into the lines now this week? There's 3 preseason games left, including tonight, and some of the young players have had some great performances. A guy like Fraser Minton probably heads back to junior. Easton Cowan, same deal. Matthew Nyes has been the story of training camp, and he's really put himself on the map here, not only to be a part of a team, but a big part of the team. How much do you read into line combos going forward now as they get ready for the start of the regular season?
Well, I think we can read a fair bit just because they've been, rather consistent, other than a couple games where maybe you didn't have all of the NHL group together in those first couple preseason games. But, it hasn't really shaken around too much. I mean, even when it did, one of the games in Montreal there, Gregor ended up back on the 4th line, with Kemp and Reeves. And so I think that there's, as long as health isn't a factor and assuming that Jarnkrok does come back and play and that he's good enough to go to start the year, I mean, I think that the forward group is pretty much set. And I think that it's going to be tough. I mean, obviously for some of those younger guys you mentioned, but, even Nick Robertson, I'm not sure with him being able to be sent back to the American Hockey League and not needing waivers and the fact that I just don't think he's in their top 12 forwards at this point in time, he's probably not likely to make the team either. I mean, there really aren't too many what we would call training camp battles. I think that the defense is a little bit interesting just because you got more injury situations there. You've got some new faces, and it's not really clear what the top 6 looks like. But, certainly among the forwards, I don't think we're going to get any surprises as long as they can get through these last few games with everybody healthy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nick Robertson. He's on a line with Nylander and Domi, but that just feels like a placeholder for Jarnkrok, right? Like, it seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, too, because Nylander and Domi, if there's questions about them, it's probably what happens in the defensive zone. And Jarnkrok in his time in Toronto has been a forward that I think Sheldon Keefe has liked to improve that part of a line. And so, I would have a hard time believing or thinking that they would enter the season again. Who knows what the injury picture looks like. But with everybody healthy, I don't think that you would probably start with those three players together, just because it's not really the way Sheldon's deployed his team. So, it's a good spot for Robertson. I don't think he's far off, and obviously he's generated a lot of shots. He scored the other night in Montreal, and I think he's going to play games for the team this year. But the realities of the cap being what they are, and just with how the team looks to be lining up, I think that he's more than likely going to start with the Marlies.
So they're obviously committed to Nylander up the middle of the ice to start the season. But what is your understanding of the plan if and when this goes awry, and who will make that decision that it's not working? Is it Keefe? Is it Trey Living? How much of a say will Nylander have? And if he goes back to the wing, like, what happens up the middle of the ice?
That's the question for me, certainly with the forward group, just because, I won't say that they're lacking depth, but that they're lacking maybe an obvious option because, David Kampf, well, they obviously like him. They gave him a 4-year contract in the offseason. I think you kind of have him pegged as your fourth-line center, and there isn't an obvious other option. I mean, Max Domi did play a lot of center last year in Chicago and even in Dallas after going over there at the deadline. I suppose he's could be the guy shifted over, but it's probably not what you want to do entering the season. And so, the way I look at it is absent some sort of trade, which I guess maybe happens near the deadline, although I don't see the Leafs having a ton of cap space then. I mean, I think that this is one of those experiments that really kind of has to work, and it's probably the main reason that you're going to see them give it, a real length of time here, because I don't think that there is an obvious plan B that's sitting at the ready here. I mean, I guess maybe the answer is it's Kampf playing as a third-line center and calling someone up from the Marlies to play on the fourth line and just making it work from there. But, clearly they think that they're better to have three lines that you're looking for some scoring from, and typically David Kampf hasn't played on lines that are counted on for offense. So I think that this is probably why it's going to be given a real length of time here to work and adjust from there.
CJ, a couple injuries on the Leafs back end. John Klingberg day to day. Conor Timmins sounds a little more serious. I know he was wearing a knee brace the other day. It's unfortunate for him because he's had a great camp and he hasn't played much over the past few seasons. But what do you make of Brad Treliving's kind of acumen as far as acquiring big-name defensemen in the past? Like when he was in Calgary, he brought in Dougie Hamilton, brought in Noah Hannafin, he signed Chris Tanev. Like he's found a way to make trades or acquisitions or signings and bring in big-name defensemen. Can he do that here in Toronto?
He can, but it might not happen before next summer. You know what I mean? I mean, the Leafs do have some guys coming off the books a year from now, and I think with more time to be in the role and evaluate things, and frankly, just for everything to loosen up around the league with the salary cap going up as we would expect next summer, then I could see it being a pretty different blue line a year from now than it is now. I'm not sure what can be done in the meantime, and this is a situation where you start to wonder. I mean, certainly they've been pretty. In discussing Klingberg's injury, that they've been sort of just saying it's a minor thing, but you're at 5 days now since any of the reporters have seen him on the ice after leaving that game last Wednesday. With Timmins, I would expect he'll be someone that starts the year on long-term injured reserve, just based on them calling it a significant injury. And I know that he was in for an MRI over the weekend, and so that's not ideal. You got Mark Giordano, on the eve of turning 40 here, pegged to be the oldest skater in the league. Missed today's practice for maintenance. It just is probably not the ideal way to be going through a camp, having so many players at the same position that have some question marks about where they're at, and then just not getting to play them together enough. I mean, what you're getting from Riley and Brody, and I would think that they're going to spend a lot of time as a pairing again this season, but I don't know how everything else is going to shake out with Liljegren, with Klingberg, and maybe some of these names that we probably haven't talked about enough, and it's just hard to know if what the state of the blue line is going to be a week from now, to see if any of the sort of depth options, whether it's Simon Benoit or Lagesson or maybe Mikko Kaukonen, who there were some nice words for him from Sheldon Keefe today. I called him sort of one of the stories of camp. If one of those guys actually has a chance to make the team, coming out of camp.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider. So trying to get a read on a marketplace based on lunatics on Twitter is probably not always wise. But, the Leafs were in Montreal for 2 games over the weekend. And, tracking Habs fans and the algorithm, you start looking at different things and more things start popping up. My sense is there's some concern about Slavkovsky and what his future is going to look like. I think that's premature. He's still very young. He's got size. He can skate. But they need that to work, right, CJ? Like you tank, you bottom out, you take the first overall pick, and you pass on Cooley. They passed on Wright. It's got to work for them. What is your sense within the organization about how they feel about the development of Slavkovsky and what they think the ceiling could be?
Well, from in the organization, I can tell you that they get a little irked by all the maniacs on Twitter that you're talking about because, they're a marketplace no different than Toronto. There's a lot of opinions out there. It's a huge fan base. Part of being a fan is worrying about things you should and probably some things that aren't worth worrying about. But you're right, big picture. This has to work. I don't know that I have to see him get X amount of points this season. Obviously coming back and being healthy would be a great start after he missed so much of his rookie year last year in terms of games for the Canadiens. But it wasn't for them that they did win the number one pick of the draft. But they're not all built the same, right? I mean, one year too early probably if you're a fan seeing what Connor Bedard's doing every night, the first overall pick afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for Slavkovsky, clearly, this is a team that's in, I don't know if they're calling it a rebuild, but it's a rebuild by any of the name. They've been trading their veteran players for a few seasons now. The stockpile draft picks, they've been making those picks, and they got to hit on them. And especially if you do get number one in the draft, I think it's got to work. So I think it is a little early. He was a young player entering the league last year, even by birthday, and only got half a season in. I think it'd be far too premature to be pegging where this is headed. But certainly, I think by the next 3 or 4 years, I mean, if you're the Canadiens, you need him to be a regular part of your team and preferably playing somewhere in the top 6.
CJ, here's my read on the Shane Pinto Ottawa situation. You can tell me how far off I am. He's a restricted free agent, and he doesn't have arbitration rights. So they made all their moves, whether it was bringing in Kubalik and Tarasenko, and they used all that money, and they said, at the end of the day, we got about $1 million left for this guy. He's got no leverage. We're going to squeeze him. He's going to take it, and we'll figure out the rest from there. And he's dug his heels in now because he scored 20 goals last year, and he said, that's not going to cut it. I know in the past, like Kevin LeBanc was a good example in San Jose. He had that 56-point season. He was an RFA. He didn't have ARB. They made him sign a 1-year, $1 million, but there was a little contract tucked away for the following season. It was like a little understanding. How have the Ottawa Senators and Shane Pinto not figured that out thus far?
Well, because I think it's gone on long enough that there's a little bit of it. It's a little contentious, which I think is normal. I mean, when the season's staring everyone in the face, the Sens are out, playing a game right now in Halifax, and they're doing a team building outing. I mean, certainly by this point in time, the organization was hoping Shane Pinto would be part of what they're doing, and there's probably still a solution somewhere in there, Frankie, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head. But if you're Shane Pinto, I think you're saying, why am I the guy taking less? I mean, he's coming off a strong year last year. He doesn't have maybe the name or reputation of some of his teammates who've signed 8-year deals and been taken care of in Ottawa. But, I think that if you're in that situation, you're feeling as though, you don't need to be the one to give anything back. And on top of that, if they thought that this was going to be one where, he might buckle under the heat or under the pressure as it gets closer. I mean, I just point to the fact that he's represented by Louis Gross, who, was William Nylander's agent, and William Nylander and Louis and Michael Nylander, took the Leafs all the way to December 1st a few years ago under similar circumstances. I mean, this is an agent who doesn't buckle, and I think it would prepare his client well for something like this. So I think that's the easy answer is if they thought he was going to buckle, then they probably underestimated him. And so sometimes you get dug in and, maybe it takes a face-to-face meeting. Obviously, it's going to take some movement in terms of an offer to...
It's just like a little understanding, CJ. It's like, listen, we can't do anything this year. You got to take the 1 year, $1 million. But don't worry. The contract, it's tucked away in a drawer. We'll file it next year. You know what I mean? Like you'll get your money. You got to do this for 1 year, but don't worry, it's tucked away. Like I don't know how they haven't gotten there.
You need trust in a negotiation to do something like that. I'm certainly not dismissing that it happens, but saying that in theory, well, you're going to sign this on January 1st. I mean, you can't go to court and get that money back if it doesn't materialize. So I think that you got to have trust for something like that to happen.
So TSN's top 50 list is coming up, the projected top 50 players of this upcoming season, and 50 through 41 was released today. You mentioned Connor Bedard a few moments ago. He's at 48. Can you make sense of that, CJ? I don't think Frankie or I had him in our top 50. He's looked amazing in preseason, and he's 48 on the TSN top 50 list.
I would say 48 for me is somewhere about right. Because I mean, I think that there's a danger, of course, getting too hyped up, pushing a rookie. But I mean, this guy, he's just everywhere he's gone. It's a track record of far exceeding expectations. And you know, who's to know with any certainty how it's going to work out, how his game will adjust. I mean, I know you can see highlights of him dangling all these players in preseason, but how many of them are going to be the same NHLers he's going to play with once it starts for real next week? But I think it's reasonable to expect him to have a really special rookie season. And, you know, I think he's going to play the minutes clearly, and he's just done it everywhere. I would, you know, I don't participate in the betting, but every time someone asks me the over-under, I'm like, I'm hammering the over on Connor Bedard, goals, assists, points. I mean, I just think that he's going to have a season like we saw Crosby or Ovechkin have as rookies, you know, way back in 05, 06. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he threatens something like 100 points. I mean, I know it might sound nuts, but look at his scoring rates everywhere. World Juniors as not the oldest in the tournament in the Western Hockey League from 16 years old right through last season. I would be taking the over myself. So I think if that's the case, I mean, obviously putting him as one of the 50 best players in the league isn't too crazy.
No, I mean, if he hits 100 points, you're talking top 20, probably top 25.
Probably top 10 in next year's.
If he hits 100 points as a rookie, he will be probably in the top 10 next year.
Yeah.
And it very well could be 100% reasonable. And you're right, CJ, about history. Like, history would suggest the most hyped, like the generational talent, the McDavids, the Crosbys, the Ovechkins, they came out of the gate flying. Like Crosby and Ovechkin, they each had 100 points their first year. Now, they were older, right? They had to wait a year because of the lockout.
Yeah.
Like, I think Ovi might have been 20 and Sid would have been 19. But still, I mean, and McDavid, if he didn't get hurt that year, he would have had probably 85 points, 90 points.
Right, and I should be clear, like 100, I'm just saying like
100's crazy.
That's the 1%. I'm just saying I don't think it's impossible. But, I mean, if you tell me he's going to get 70 to 80, like I think that's very fair.
Yeah, it's tough to argue based on the hype, based on what he did in junior and what he's done in the preseason. I still didn't have him in my top 50.
Admittedly, I did not.
I didn't because I wasn't going to give it like a gratuitous, okay, I'll throw you in to throw you in.
I just think it's one of those things, Hayes. There's been players that have been playing in the league and you've seen the progression like the last few years, and you're like, that's a guy that's ready to pop off and have a massive year. Like, I'll tell you who I had at 48 on my personal list. At 48, I had Carter Verhaeghe.
Okay.
I think that's somewhat reasonable considering he just had a big playoffs. He's a goal scorer. Like, that's a guy that I think I'm giving an opportunity to say, I'm projecting you're going to pop off and have a massive, like, what's a massive year for him? 85 points.
Probably 40 goals, 85 points.
That's
probably 45th best player in the league. Like, that makes sense.
You know, so.
Yeah. I
just depends how you interpret that.
It's very difficult, right? CJ, especially with different positions. I'll give you, I think my example is probably an even better one, not to go over the top. 48, I had Hampus Lindholm.
Okay.
But he was phenomenal last year. I think he was one of the 30 best players in the league last year.
Yeah.
So if he does what he did last year, but it's not going to be, he's not a point-a-game guy. He's just a remarkably smart, predictable, good player on a great team.
Yeah.
So how do you compare that to 40 goals for an 18-year-old? Very difficult to do. But I don't think Lindholm's going to make it.
It's a punishing exercise. I can't, you guys must have just spent hours on that.
Yes. And what you end up doing, CJ, is you go back and forth, and then you look at it, you're like, okay, how do I not have that guy in? Or how do I not have that? Or Bedard, because you can see it.
Yeah.
Well, you just said, I can see that. Like, if he scored 40 and had 85 points, it would not be shocking. It wouldn't be. I'm not expecting it, but it wouldn't be shocking. And if he does that, he deserves to be in the top 50. And it's a projection.
You make your list in parts, right? You do your top fives easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's top five is going to be
blah,
the
blah,
same,
blah.
just different. Then your top 10, your top 20. Once you get after 20, from 20 to 50,
dicey.
that's when you kind of make a list, and then you let it simmer, and then you go back to it. You're like, hey, how do I feel about this player today? And then you're not so sure. I don't know, 2 weeks of like simmering on this, off and on.
How high is your highest goalie? Because that would be hard for me to know where
I'll
to
tell
put
you right now.
Yeah.
My highest goalie, CJ, is 11, and my highest goalie is Ilya Sorokin.
You put Sorokin that high.
Yeah.
I have I have kind of Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, Sorokin, all within the same range, but they're in the 20s.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I figure I put one goalie somewhat high.
although Vasilevsky's already out. Like, I submitted my list before his surgery.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So he's already gone. Like, I'm assuming he'll be in the top 50. I don't know.
Do we get
I
a
haven't seen the
bonus
list.
player? Let's add a bonus player.
Yeah, we should actually send that to, everyone over at TSN Hockey. Like, just take him out now. He's not going to be in.
If Dryden, if you're listening.
Yeah,
we
whoever's
wanna
running
add-
the show. Mike Lane, Steve Dryden.
We want to
figure
add
it
a
out.
bonus player.
Yeah, CJ, you're in. You'd be cool with that, right?
Yeah, 2 more votes for Bedard. I think you guys can't.
There you
go
go. I'm putting Bedard in for Vasilevsky.
There we go.
Yes, Bedard's in there.
Now we're not haters
Now
anymore.
we're not. We love Bedard. Huge season. All right, CJ. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, see you guys.
Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline.
Dude, did you?
Yeah, Vasilevsky's already out.
Did you just realize that right now?
Yeah, I did. I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
And then I looked. I'm like, oh, I have Vasilevsky. Of course I do. And he's out. He's not. He can't finish.
No, he
in
can't
the
be a top
50
50 now.
He's going to miss 25 games.
I think we get one addition.
Vasilevsky's out, Bedard's in.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
There
in.
you go.
I hope everyone's listening at home and everyone in the TSN hockey offices.
Let the record show.
Yes.
Bedard is in our list now.
But I look at like my 41 through 50. I had Svechnikov in there. I had Heischer in there.
I got Heischer higher.
Yeah.
Where do I have Heischer.
I put Timo Meyer in there.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like, how do you put you put an 18-year-old who could do it, definitely, or Timo Meyer, who I think will have like 37 goals, 78 points, and be a great player on a great team.
Okay, so I have Kyle Connor at 43.
I have
and I'm
Connor
like,
in there
this
too.
guy scores 40 goals. It seems like every year, right?
I got Mark Stone at like 43 or 44. I got Devon Taves.
Rupe Hintz I have at 41.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of good players. Like I had Matty Beniers at 50 because I just see him as that guy. He's the first line center in Seattle. They're a good team. They score by like. There's just a lot of things that could go well for him this year.
Yep.
And I can't remember. He might have had 60 points last year.
He had a really good year.
It's very conceivable that in his second year he pops off
happens.
to 60. Well, 85 points. That's like for a forward. If you're in the top 50, I think it's got to be 80 plus points.
Yeah, like unless you're a Bergeron type,
Yeah.
where you still deserve to be in there because of everything else you do. But that's what also makes it difficult to kind of compose a list like this, because you look at Jacob Slavin. He's 50 on the list. Slavin he's going to have like 25 points.
Yeah, he's not a points guy.
But he kills penalties.
Yeah.
He's maybe the best shutdown defenseman in the league. He moves the puck well. Like, there's a lot that goes into what he represents. That's why I had Lindholm on my list.
Brad Marchand is an example of that. How do you do a top 50 and not have Brad Marchand? He could have 68 points this year.
He's on my list.
He's got to be on the list, though.
Absolutely.
He has to.
I think I had him 29 or 30. Like, I have him dropping down.
But there's going to be players lower on your list that have way more points than him this year.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the player he is and what he does and sort of what he represents, he has to be on that list.
Absolutely.
It's not just about points per games played at the end of the day.
Like the top 50 list, the debates are always between 21 and 50.
Yeah.
And then, who's 11 through 20, you can argue. Do you have Kaprizov? Do you have Marner? Do you have Patterson? Do you have Point? You can go back and forth on who you would personally take there, and that's a difficult practice.
Yeah.
But at the top of the list, it's going to be McDavid, McCarr, Draisaitl, Matthew.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows who it's
You
going to be.
need to remember, we're making a projection at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
You keep in mind what happened last year, but we're ultimately projecting what we think will happen this year.
Yep, exactly. But you look through it every single year. You're like, man, there's some good players.
Yeah.
I think what sticks. I guess we'll continue to talk about this as the rest of the list comes out. But I had an omission the first time he's ever been out of the list, probably maybe since he came into the league, and he wasn't in my top 50. You want to take a guess at who that is?
Do you want to do it after the break?
Sure, we can come back. You let that stew a little bit.
All right.
I'm assuming you probably had him outside your top 50 as well.
I had an omission because I took him out. I meant to put him back in, and then I started going and putting guys in, and I'm like,
start getting at it.
And then I was like, you know what? I kind of like my list, and I don't need to have him in, so I kept him out.
Okay, we might be talking about the same guy. We'll see.
Play in the Eastern Conference now.
He always has. My guy always has.
My guy used to be in the West.
Okay. We'll get more into this. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. New spin on a Leaf ticket giveaway this year. We're going to start today as well. We're up against the clock here. Okay, quickly. Do you want me to announce who I don't have on my list?
You go, and then I'll go.
Alex Ovechkin.
Wow.
I do not have him in my top 50.
You think the wheels are falling off?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's 38 now, I believe. I think he scores 35, maybe 40, has like 65 points. I don't think he can keep up 5-on-5 anymore.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be a pretty bad team.
He's played, like, I'll tell you what, man. He's played a fairly hard brand of hockey. Like,
Yes.
he used to run guys. He was a physical, booming
He's a
presence. Beast.
Like, he'd have 12 shots, 13 hits, 3 goals. Like, he was a machine.
I have him in my list, fairly high. Like,
I just don't see it happening.
Not too high, but middle of the pack, let's call it.
I assume he'll be on it.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't 41 through 50.
He's going to be,
he's going to
be middle of the pack. That's where I have him.
Yep. I did not have him.
One of my omissions is Johnny Gaudreau. I was rearranging the list.
Yeah.
Okay. And I got to putting people in, and I was like, oh, it looks great. I sent it off, and then I'm like, oh, I forgot to put Johnny Hockey back.
I have him on, but I was dicey.
And I
with
was
him
like,
too. He didn't have a good year.
I go, do I need to email them to put? I don't think so. I think it's okay.
I wouldn't be shocked if you.
Yeah.
And like now is kind of a weird vibe in Columbus.
Yeah.
Something to Chew On is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From touchdowns to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice cold beer is always dialed in for game time. Hustle into your local BP tonight. What a night it's going to be tonight. Monday nighter. Woo. Seattle at New York. But a lot of people are buzzing about the Raptors today, and specifically Masai Ujiri. And we're asking the question, and we have been all day online. Do you think the Raptors have handled Pascal Siakam's contract situation in the right way? Yes, I do, because I don't think they have a choice. I'm not sure Pascal was committed to sign. He wasn't going to, because he wants to get all NBA, max out, basically do what Jaylen Brown did in Boston, where there's no negotiation in the NBA.
Right.
You hit certain markers, you just get that money. So I'm not sure what the Raptors could really do differently, but I will say I was taken aback by Masai's approach today. Even Darko Rajokovic, you could tell, like, there was a messaging behind the scenes that Siakam was bothered people in the organization last year.
And they're not being quiet about it.
They're really not, and his name was in the rumor mill all summer. He's going into a contract year. Let's play Masai. This is Masai a little bit earlier today when he was asked about the contract situation of Siakam. He didn't really address it. Instead, he kind of went down a different direction.
We do believe in Pascal. We do believe that a lot of our players didn't play the right way last year, and we want to see them play the right way. I said it that we were selfish. I'm not running away from that. We were selfish and we did not play the right way. So let us see it when we play the right way.
That's an interesting comment, man. We were selfish. We didn't play the right way. When asked about Siakam.
That's the part. That's the part that makes it so bizarre. The question was specific to Siakam.
Yes.
Brief little just brush by on Siakam. Just going to hammer
Hey, we love
this home.
Siakam, but
A lot of selfish stuff going on here when asked about Siakam. It is bizarre. The whole day was bizarre.
It speaks to what it says to me is they really wanted to keep Fred. Like they felt like Fred, like Van Vliet was not the issue. If anything, he was the guy that was keeping things connected. And Siakam, fairly or unfairly, now it's on the record. It's almost like the reason things went awry last year is because selfish play, a selfish attitude, and it was driven by the star player. And Siakam's the best player on the team. Even Scotty kind of addressed it and said it just sucked the energy out of the room as if he wasn't responsible for any of it last year, which I'm a little bit confused by as a second-year player that started a lot of games and played a lot of minutes. But it just sets up, like Masai and Bobby Webster, for that matter, there is this belief that I think is starting to grow, like outside of the organization, that they are somewhat of a rudderless ship in terms of a big picture plan.
Right.
Like, where are they going here? If Siakam's going to walk, if Anunoby's going to walk, Fred just walked for nothing. Like, are they waiting for the last remaining pieces of the championship team to completely go? Because, like, Van Vliet's gone, Nurse is gone, you got Siakam left. OG was technically on the team, but he didn't play. For everything to turn over? You know, but you've committed to Pirtle.
You know what irks me about this whole thing today is that, like, you're in charge. You're Masai.
Yes.
You're the one who can change the sort of outlook of all this stuff. There's guys selfish. Great. Get them out. Like, you're the guy that's in charge of this. Mm-hmm. And you know the way organizations run. If there's issues at the top, chances are they trickle down and there's issues lower and lower. So a lot of the times, man, like it sounds like it's almost he's kind of sucking out in a way and using this media availability to act like childish to a degree here by calling everyone selfish. You know, like take a look in the mirror yourself, man. Your moves haven't been all-star moves since Kawhi.
Right. There's a reason they're in the position they're in.
Plenty of blame on him in all this.
Yeah, it's
a lot of finger pointing to me.
It is just it's a different attitude, right? Like it's a different approach from Masai. Like generally his history, like uber positive, uber optimistic. And I don't think that's gone in terms of the big picture, right? I think he's still selling that. Like we're going to figure this out and we're going for a championship and we're going to make it happen. But when you consider his media availability at the end of the season, which I think represented what a lot of the fans were thinking, this went awry, something was going on here, and something's got to be addressed. But Van Vliet did not leave because you decided you wanted him to leave. He left because you got a better deal somewhere else. Nick Nurse is gone now. You could have moved off Siakam. You did. Maybe the price wasn't there. Maybe the deal wasn't there that made sense for you. But still, if you really want to do something, you can in the NBA. Siakam's still here. You could have moved off Anunoby. Anunoby's still here. So why is this still the attitude? I got it at the end of the season why Masai was not happy with things. And he was forthright. It wasn't a fun year. They were selfish. Things went awry. Things have to change. But things outside of Nurse kind of going his separate way. And I think, again, that was mutually accepted, right? I think Nick Nurse was willing to leave and ready to leave, and he's taken on a new challenge. Fred left on his own accord. What else has happened here that suggests like it's been addressed?
Yeah.
Other than and again, the approach from Masai is like, well, you guys still have to prove to me that you're not selfish anymore.
Right, but that's the thing that makes this so bizarre is that we're here at media day to start the season. You know the way that usually is every year. It's pretty rosy. Like, we're very optimistic about what this season holds. We're happy with who we got. We think we got a good... It's the same old stuff. To rehash some of the stuff that was plaguing the team last year and the narratives you heard, it's like, yeah, you got to get over it and move on, and you got to leave it there, or you got to do something about it. And it seems like neither of those things have happened.
Well, and again, because of Siakam's contractual situation, where if he's all NBA this year, it triggers a different level of contract. It doesn't really matter what Masai thinks the approach is. Siakam, I don't think, was going to sign anyway.
Right.
So, this idea that, like, what if he does have a great year and it's all NBA? Is Masai going to say, well, that was because my messaging was stop being selfish, and he proved that he's not, so now I'm just going to say, go ahead, you get your money? Like, what? I don't know if it really even matters.
If that's what he wants to tell himself, like, if that makes him sleep at night and he wants to tell himself that and give him a pat on the back, then, hey, go for it. That's great. But, like the player's going to do it because the player's going to do it because he's that good of a player and he's in a good situation and the system works. And we don't even know, like, how's this going to work with the new coach? Well, like, how different is this coach from Nick Nurse? What's that?
Even Darko was kind of preaching the Siakam has got, like, he was asked about, how Siakam fits in and what, like, I saw the quote earlier. Effectively, he was like, well, if you get double teamed, like, you have to pass. It's like, okay, is that what we're talking about? Like, Siakam was getting doubled, then he was forcing offense. We did see that a lot last year. But you're new here.
Yeah.
And you've never been a head coach in the NBA. It seems like a strange approach where the new coach and the long-standing president are going at the longest-standing player.
Yeah.
Because now Siakam is the only guy left. Siakam's been here the whole time.
They're playing with fire, man.
Yeah.
And I think it's heading down the direction where these guys are going to get burned. And a lot of the goodwill that they had built up here, that's going to run out this year. It just seems like that's the way it's going to play out. They're already not off to a good start here, like as far as controlling the narrative and what the storylines are with the team.
Yeah, and listen, if Siakam walks, if Anunoby walks, and then they decide, okay, we need to restart, it's like, man, you're 2 years late.
Yeah.
Like, and everyone knew Wembanyama was coming. At the deadline, they were like 7th last in the NBA. They were not going to drop that far. But they bought at the deadline. They gave up an asset to get Poeltl. Then they paid Poeltl because they felt they had to. And now it's like, what are you going to be in the future? Like, at best, let's say everything works out. Darko Rajokovic is a good coach. They all start playing good ball. What are they, a 45-win team at best this year? That's a playoff team in the East. You get in, okay, that's good vibes. But like, how do you get to the championship level? It just seems more likely they have to go a step or two back before they go 2 or 3 steps forward still. And it's like they're refusing that.
They're a play-in team. That's
to accept
what they are.
that. That's probably the projection at this point.
They're a play-in team. They're
which is what they were last year. So what have you? How have you grown?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
they're kind of like the Vancouver Canucks. Everything goes well for you, you'll be in the playoffs.
Yep.
Things don't go well, you'll be on the outside.
And people are going to be wondering what your plan is.
Why didn't you go in the proper direction?
That's probably the best way to leave this. Is I think it's imperative. Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, by this time next year, probably even by the deadline, the fan base better know what your plan is.
Yeah.
There better be an answer on what you have, what you're doing, and why you haven't made moves in the past. Like, what is it going to add up to? The clock is ticking on an answer, one way or the other. And I think it started today. TSN 1050's Leafs lineup is your chance to win Leaf tickets every week, all season long. Every weekday, we will announce a current or former Maple Leaf player. On Fridays, you'll have a chance to call in and name the Leafs lineup of the week. So you name all the players in the lineup, and you'll score a pair of tickets to see an upcoming Maple Leaf game. So basically, we're going to put a line together all week, every week of the season, to win tickets. Pretty cool giveaway.
Yeah.
Today's player, this feels like a perfect start. Today's player, the first player of the season, Wendell Clark. Wendell Clark, first player of the season. I think that works, right?
So there's no clue?
No, there's no clue. You got to hear every player every single day.
Okay.
And on Friday, when we tell you to call in, you got to name starting
All
with
5.
Wendell. Whoever's getting named tomorrow, Wednesday, you gotta be on your toes, man. These are Leaf tickets we're giving away.
Did you pick Wendell? Was that your
I
pick?
did not. Our boy Chris came up with that.
Good
Chris
pick.
is on the ball here.
Good pick.
All right, this week we're giving away a pair of tickets to the Leafs take on the Wild October 14th. This is a regular season game for the record. This is real deal Holyfield, not preseason. All right, so the first player of the week is Wendell Clark. We'll have 4 more players as the week continues. Get to our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Jays Twins tomorrow, we'll tee that up. Leafs Habs tonight. The Monday Nighter, we'll get to that as well. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Looking at some props for tonight, all right? Little parlay, same-game parlay. Kenneth Walker the second. Ken Walker, not Junior, the second. Kenneth Walker the second, anytime touchdown. He's had back-to-back 2 TD games. He's been a stud. DK Metcalf over 70.5 receiving yards tonight. He's cleared that in 2 of the first 3 games. And the Giants team total under the number, 23.5. Under the number. Saquon out. Obviously, you got Waller, but you got the left tackle Thomas out tonight. I'm not sure Danny Dimes is going to be slinging it. That parlay paying plus 545. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Same game parlays this NFL season now include passing touchdowns and receptions on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. You must be 19 plus, physically located in Ontario. You see your boy LeBron picking losers over the weekend?
Le Cooler.
Le Cooler, as you call them.
You know who else is on a cooler? Want to hear something?
Who's that?
So I'm playing against Korolnik in our 1050 fantasy football league this week. He changed his name, his team name. It was something else. He changed it to Mike Babcock this week.
Any reason for that?
Because he's playing against me and he wanted to get in my head
actually,
all
that's
week.
pretty smart.
So he's playing against me, changes his team name to Mike Babcock, and I'm laying an absolute beat down on him.
Good
and I
for
got
you.
Zach Charbonnet tonight, and he's going to lay the hammer on him.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, AK was in New York last night.
Dude, he was with
at the
Taylor
Jets
Swift.
game. Yeah, he and Swift were effectively together last night.
Yeah, his ex-girlfriend.
What do you think would happen if he tried to get into that suite? Like, they would just lay such a beating on him. It'd be like, you can't come close.
Well, you think if it's one of those things, you're dressed the part, you kind of walk the part, like maybe you kind of just slide in there, like just oozing confidence.
Yeah, it would be worth a shot.
Like act like you belong.
Yeah, I guess act like you belong.
Yeah.
And then it gets awkward because if you get in, then Taylor Swift probably has a restraining order on you.
Well, and then they ask you, like, who are you? Like, I host Toronto's #1 sports radio talk show.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Bang. Just starts yelling bang at people. Like, oh, yeah, I've heard of you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool trip, though, man. New York, Jets, Chiefs. The ratings were, astronomical last night, in large part because it's Kansas City. It's a New York team, Sunday Night Football. But let's be honest, Taylor Swift She's bringing in a lot of different people.
That brings the juice in the building.
Yeah, it does.
Big time.
Yep.
So.
We'll see. I don't know how many more. I don't know where Kansas City is next.
I don't know, but the NFL's taking.
She'll be back soon.
Oh, they're taking full advantage of this.
As they should. Like, I know people are goofing on them. Like, you're watching anyway.
Yeah.
They're trying to take advantage of a completely different demographic. They're smart business people.
Yes.
They make a lot of money.
The best.
They know what they're doing.
The best in sports.
Yes. I think they'll continue to go down that road. Yeah. You're not going to stop because you don't like Taylor Swift.
No kidding.
You're a diehard football fan. You're still watching, and they know it.
Yeah.
It's all good. Kansas City's in Minnesota next week. Do you think maybe Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, anything's possible?
I can see that.
She might get down. Maybe she'll catch a Jays game, right?
Oh,
Jays
there
Twins
you go.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Game 1. All right. Thanks, Frankie. Good seeing you, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're out of here. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out, everyone for tuning in today, TV, radio, podcast, and web. We got Owen Noodles back on the show tomorrow. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
Connor Bedard is now in our top 50.
Yes, he is.
4 p.m.
Absolutely, he is. We'll chat then.